In the early morning of May 28, 2018, a horrific crime occurred in Thousand Oaks, California. Brinn Spacer, 27, attacked and stabbed her boyfriend Chad Amelia, 26, 108 times during a psychotic episode allegedly triggered by cannabis use. Chad Amelia was known as a kind, considerate, and sociable young man. He graduated from Chico State University and was working at an accounting firm in Camarillo. Chad lived with 2 roommates in an apartment in Thousand Oaks. Brinn Spacer was born in Illinois and diagnosed with hearing loss at a young age. She overcame challenges to excel academically, earning a PhD in audiology from the University of Washington in 2017. She then moved to Thousand Oaks and worked at the UCLA Pediatric Audiology Center in Los Angeles. Spacer had no criminal record and was not a regular drug user. Chad and Spacer had only known each other for a few weeks after meeting at a dog park. They had a harmonious relationship with no signs of trouble. On the evening of May 27, 2018, Spacer came to Chad's apartment to watch a movie. Around midnight, Chad went outside to smoke cannabis and invited Spacer to try. Initially, Spacer felt nothing. Then Chad brought out a bong and they smoked more. Spacer claimed she had a severe reaction immediately after the second hit, feeling short of breath and thinking she was going to die. She hallucinated that she had died, needed to attack Chad to revive herself. Around 1 a.m. on May 28th, police received a report of an altercation. Upon arrival, they found Chad lying in a pool of blood, with Spacer kneeling beside him, holding a 20 cm knife, screaming frantically. Spacer did not comply with orders to drop the knife and even stabbed herself in the neck. Police had to use a taser and batons to subdue Spacer, but these were ineffective. It took 9 baton strikes before they could disarm her. By this time, Chad had stopped breathing and was pronounced dead at the scene. Spacer suffered a broken left wrist from the strikes and was taken for emergency treatment. The autopsy revealed that Chad had been stabbed 108 times. Blood tests of both individuals only detected THC, with no other illegal substances present. Cannabis found in the apartment had a THC concentration of 4%, much lower than that sold in legal dispensaries. Spacer was initially charged with first-degree murder and 1 count of animal cruelty. She was released on a $510,000 bail. Trial lasted 5 years due to multiple postponements. In September 2023, the prosecutor unexpectedly reduced the charge to involuntary manslaughter, greatly upsetting the victim's family. This decision was based on expert medical opinions that Spacer had experienced a cannabis-induced psychotic episode. At the trial, the defense argued that Spacer did not intentionally intoxicate herself, but was persuaded by Chad to smoke cannabis. They also presented testimony from one of Chad's roommates, who had previously had a negative experience smoking cannabis with. Spacer testified that she had no history of mental illness and did not expect cannabis to cause a psychotic episode. She stated that she hallucinated that she had died and needed to attack Chad to revive herself. After nearly 4 hours of deliberation, the jury found Spacer guilty of involuntary manslaughter. They also confirmed aggravating factors such as the seriousness of the crime, brutal violence, and use of a weapon. This verdict meant that both the prosecutor and defense attorney agreed that Spacer's actions were the result of a cannabis-induced psychotic episode. Spacer was allowed to return home with her family, awaiting sentencing on January 23, 2024. This case has sparked much debate in public opinion. Some people believe the sentence is too lenient for the brutal crime Spacer committed. They don't believe cannabis can cause such a violent reaction and think Spacer deserves a harsher conviction. Conversely, Spacer's supporters argue that she was the victim of an unusual reaction to cannabis she couldn't have anticipated. They believe the verdict accurately reflects the nature of the incident as an unfortunate accident rather than an intentional crime. The case has also raised concerns about the potential dangers of cannabis, especially for first-time users. Some medical experts warn that cannabis can cause severe psychiatric reactions in some people, particularly those with a family history of mental disorder. However, supporters of cannabis legalization argue that this is an isolated case and should not be used to generalize all cannabis use. They contend that the regulation and quality control of legal cannabis would help minimize similar risks. The case also highlights the importance of educating the public about potential impacts of cannabis, especially for new users. Many argue that more research is needed on the long-term effects of cannabis on the brain and mental health. For the victim's family, this verdict is a shock and a major disappointment. They feel justice has not been served and that Chad's life has been undervalued. Chad's father, Shan Amelia, expressed outrage at the prosecutor's decision to reduce the charge and believes Spacer was fully aware of her actions. However, legal experts note that proving first or second-degree murder in this case would have been very difficult due to the lack of evidence of premeditated intent to kill. They argue that the involuntary manslaughter verdict accurately reflects the nature of the incident based on available evidence. This case also raises questions about legal responsibility in cases involving substance use. Although Spacer voluntarily smoked cannabis, can she be held fully responsible for her actions while in a psychotic state? Court's verdict seems to have considered both factors: Spacer's personal responsibility in deciding to smoke cannabis and the unusual mental state she experienced afterward. The involuntary manslaughter verdict reflects the view that while Spacer bears some responsibility, her actions were not an intentional crime. This case also highlights the importance of carefully considering psychological and neurological factors in criminal cases. It shows that the justice system needs to be flexible and able to consider complex cases that don't fit conventional legal definitions of crime. For Brinn Spacer, this verdict means she will face prison time, but not a life sentence, as would be the case if convicted of murder. However, the consequences of her actions will follow her for life. In addition to prison time, Spacer faces the loss of her professional license and difficulties in rebuilding her life after release. This case is a tragedy for all involved. A life was senselessly lost, promising career destroyed, and two families deeply hurt. It also serves as a cautionary tale about the unforeseen consequences of substance use, even for substances considered relatively safe like cannabis. Finally, this case raises complex questions about personal responsibility, the impact of substances on behavior, and how the justice system should handle cases involving mental disorders. It also emphasizes the need for more research on the effects of cannabis on mental health and the importance of educating the public about potential risks.